Welcome, everyone. I'm Father Norm, and this is our very first segment of our podcast, Heart Matters. And of course, I'm here with my good partner in the midst of all of this, and there's Gino.
I'm Gino. And how about we just let them know right off the bat how we got here?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
You want to tell the story because you reached out to me.
Well, sure, I can do that. I've been real involved. I'm pastor of a parish for a number of years, St. Vincent in Akron, and it's a community in which our parish is the actual parishioners coming to church is about 85-90% white. But the school is a combination of actually about 65-70% people of color and 30% white. And for me, it also includes, you'll hear more about my growing up years, but that whole black-white connection. And so getting on Facebook, learning about other people, I was able to read and see you, Gino, and recognize, oh, here's a guy from the little I knew was a pastor into a faith connection, which is also part of what we're all about, and also somebody who's really involved in the community and how we can grow and be better as a community in all our diversity. And so, yep, I checked in with you, and then you responded.
So you stalked me.
I stalked you, yes, yes.
So we had a conversation. I remember you reached out to me. It was on LinkedIn. You sent me a message. It was like, hey, would you love to get coffee one time? And I was like, yeah, sure. I thought you were spam, but I was like,
yes.
As long as I just made sure my wife had my location, just in case. You know?
Oh, yes.
And then, but we sat down, we had coffee, and we talked, and we had a conversation around leadership development and community and faith and all these different type of things. And at the end of it, I remember you asking, would you be open to doing this again?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. And then we set up a time the next month, and now we look up, and it's been a couple of years. We've been doing that once or twice every month for the last couple of years now. Oh, yeah.
And we never thought it was going to come to this,
no.
But the great conversation said, hey, we can involve other people in them, and because it's just so good and so vital for me, and I think for you, and hopefully for the whole people out there. But in saying that, talking about the importance of friendship, and I know, as I mentioned, I grew up in a racially mixed area and also in the school, but coming to meet you, that whole thing of, okay, we can connect, we could talk about race, we could talk about other issues, and we would. I remember initially some concern, but this is what was striking to me. We got in these conversations where, okay, we're talking about topics, but already we were starting to talk about our stories, our relationships with each other, and our faith grounding, that somehow the divine presence, God, is in the midst of all of that. And that was already taking it to another level, not just talking about the latest insights in race, black and white, which I had some concerns. I didn't want to come across like the white liberal, with you.
Yeah, and I think that was part of our initial kind of chemistry, was that we had some of these similarities in our upbringings, in the sense of I also grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and but when I went to school, even some of that kind of dynamic that you spoke of, me going to St. Mary's, at the time in the 90s, there was about that same kind of split. Like, it was the white folks in our school were the minority for the most part, and we had a lot of diversity, and so that exposure to diversity has always made me appreciative and value, those differences. And so hearing those things in your story, I think that part of it clicked as well. But we're vastly different, and we have different skin, we have different backgrounds and stories, but there was also these very similar parts of our story that typically, whether white or black, didn't, weren't a part of a lot of people that I know. And so I think that was part of the intrigue, I think, in our initial relationship in our initial conversations.
Yeah, and for me, I think there was maybe a little hesitation in myself, maybe with you, because as the white guy talking, I didn't want to come across like the white liberal who's being so sensitive to a black guy as his friend. I didn't want that to happen, and it really didn't. We got through, I personally got through any of that self-consciousness, and as we just started talking naturally with each other and connecting, it felt really good, and it felt like, which is so important in our culture today, especially among men, a lot of times don't really have a deeper relationship. I mean, hey, we talk about sports, we talk about some of the other things going on, but we started talking not only about issues, but sharing some of the deep inner feelings that both of us have experienced around race and around being human.
Just life things, I think. And I think for me, I don't think that I had those reservations of coming off as a black guy or anything like that. But I do think I had initial questions of like, what does he want?
Yeah.
Like, what is he asking me for? And is this something to exploit my blackness? Or is this, or is he genuinely interested in like, and I could tell that you were genuinely interested in my story and in my experience by the way that you listened. Yeah. And it was, even when you asked questions, there were questions that were asking for like the heart of who I was, as opposed to, some experiment or something that you were trying to do. And so like that genuineness of just who you are came across, and that, I think, drop some of those reservations that I might have had, but yeah. And then once those walls dropped, then we could have conversations
about anything and everything.
Yeah, we talked about all kinds of things at that point. But
and I know when I look at that, talking about moving to a deeper level of friendship. I mean, obviously we had 2 or 3 times at Starbucks, and knowing me that I was meeting you in North Canton, I kept losing the place, and somehow we reconnected. Yeah. But it was really neat because I don't know if you remember this. After a few times, you said, "Hey, come to my house. We can talk there." And so we did. And I thought, I mean, that was like a step. Yeah, in your home, being with you. And then I can't remember if it was the first time around, but I know early on, being at your home, met your beautiful wife. Mm-hmm. I mean, wow, Cassandra. You're blessed, Well, and again, she's beautiful outside and in, and grateful for her. But then having a meal together, I mean, that took it a whole nother level. This just isn't two black and white talking about big issues of the day, but meeting your family, having that meal, took it to a deeper level of friendship that to me, especially as a Catholic priest, I'm not married, I don't have family, that sacred gift of friendship, and seeing it was moving in that direction, not forced, not artificial, but just natural, including for both of us, part of it for me too, and you, is the laughter, the kidding around with each other. All that said, something deeper and good is happening here.
Yeah. Do you remember what initiated that whole conversation?
No.
No? So I remember we were at Starbucks, and I was going through a hard time at the time, and I was just talking to you about it and things like that, and you were doing your Father Norm thing, just being very inquisitive, but also like listening, and like I could tell that you cared, and that would have been enough. But you actually went above beyond, and you like blessed me and our family in our hard time. And after that, it was just like this is just more than just meeting this guy and we're just having coffee. Like it would, and then it was actually Cassandra. I can't take credit though. I could, but I'm not going to take credit because it's not really mine to take. Cassandra was like, "We should invite Father Norm over for dinner," and I was like, "Yeah, like let's invite him over." And then she was like, "Well, what does he like?" And then she went on this thing because she loves to like cook for people.
Oh yeah.
And then she made a meal, and you came over. But I do feel like that meal did break down even another wall or another like barrier to, was like, oh, like this is actually like more than an acquaintance that we're just meeting for coffee every month. This is like a relationship that's developing for sure.
Yeah, and I know also for me, feeling much more comfortable over time talking, again, white guy, black guy, being sensitive and finding out, again, kind of natural. I could ask you difficult questions that I normally wouldn't ask somebody black or white. Just saying like, okay, let me know a little bit about how you feel, even how you, as a black man, and even connecting here, and tell me a little bit more about that. If we weren't friends, I wouldn't go there. Oh, that's too sensitive, and I can't ask a guy like about his feelings like that. But I did, and it was natural.
Yeah, and I think a piece of that is like you have to have that relational component before you even ask for that level of vulnerability, right? And the other part of that, I think, is there's a quote that I always use, like in leadership development, like be more interested than you are trying to be interesting, which is like this concept of like if you're rooted in asking more questions as opposed to making more proclamations and statements, it opens up the door for like that level of vulnerability and just openness to see someone else's perspective so that you can get like a holistic approach. My buddy Bryson always says this, it's stuck with me over the years, that there's, for us it's scripture, but for whoever, it's this thing that is the thing that guides your moral compass. For us is scripture, right? And our perspective of what scripture is. And then there's like our experiences, and those two things typically shape our worldview. But outside of those things that shape our worldview are reality, right? And your reality exists outside of that, and my reality exists outside of that for you. And so the openness to other people's realities oftentimes creates a space where we can have connection and relationship and vulnerability and ask the hard questions. But I think we never get there sometimes because people get entrenched in their own experiences, in their own worldview, that we don't open ourselves up for those other experiences and those other realities outside of the ones that we're accustomed to.
And I know, and you're saying it, for me, that and experiencing it with you, from you, that spirit of openness, to want to know, to seek to understand in a good way. Because now we're becoming friends and sharing each other's story. Not just, oh, this will be an interesting guy to talk to about his experience. It may have started there, but just that kind of sharing and understanding also, and I know we'll talk in the future more about this, how we've evolved over the years and being comfortable. Because I think a lot of people today aren't that comfortable. Or the other thing that happens, which was good, we took time. In our culture today, even if you're having lunch with somebody, it might be 45 minutes, 50 minutes, we need to go in our direction. A couple of those times we made more time and laid it out there, and were able to not just quickly get to the next thing, or hey, I'll see you in a week or a month, and that whole reality that when we got done, it was very natural once we got to know each other to say, hey, when are we getting together again, and set it up, so we made sure we did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think exposure too, right? Having, us getting to be able to meet regularly, the more and more we got to meet, the more and more our relationship was able to deepen. But I think for a lot of people, they don't even get to that point. And so, especially now, the majority of people's interactions are mostly digital now, right? So it makes it hard to have those genuine, sustainable connections when the majority of time that you're connecting with somebody is not in person. It's not relational. And so having those touch points and that FaceTime helps build that relational capital to where, over time, right? Like I know that because of our relationship, if you ever had to ask me something hard, I know it's coming from a genuine place, but it's because I know that you care for me. But I know that you care for me because we spent so much time with each other, and how you've stewarded that time with me and stewarded my time lets me know that you are genuinely, caring and loving and for me. And so I'm open to whatever hard things that you have to ask.
So I faked it pretty well, huh?
Yeah. You did.
Obviously true. Both of us, we got to hear this Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General of the United States, and he came to our area, and we got to see him, and probably a lot of people aren't familiar with him, but as the Surgeon General, under a couple administrations, one of the things he does is, with our culture, look and say, what's needed here, or what's a concern for health? And one of the things he brought up was loneliness. And when he brought it up and wrote a book and drew a lot of people to read the book, and now he's going all over the country, it really struck a nerve in his saying, that we're out there, we're connecting in a lot of ways. Like you said, it can be digital connection, but who do you have as a good friend? Who do you have that you relate to? And even when I first heard that, I was talking to even young adults in college and so forth, and young marrieds, and sometimes they were active, engaged, involved. But I'd say, is there anybody you could talk about your feelings, your struggles, or even the things that you enjoy and are excited about? And people would often say, well, not really. So part of it I really valued. I mean, we heard him after we were already going to this level and saying, wow, lots of other people need this. When I'm talking to folks, it's not just, we talk about the Browns or we talk about some other sports
we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, no kidding, don't go there. But saying, hey, and that's good. You don't have to have a deep, intimate conversation all the time.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, to be able to talk about fears, struggles, and as I said, even things we're excited about that other people might want to hear because they care about us, and glad to see we're having that joy.
Yeah. And the thing that's always interesting to me about that is, in a world where, it's almost like we are connected because of digital platforms and all those things. We're so connected, but we're so disconnected, to the point to where people can be in a room full of, thousands of people and still feel alone, right? You still feel the sense of even not just being by yourself, but being by yourself in your situation, or being by yourself feeling what you're actually feeling. And having, not just one relationship, but I think having a diversity of relationships, to where and this is where even I've enjoyed, our relationship is, your perspective and just at life and subjects and things is different than mine, because one, you've lived longer than I've had.
I have 40 years longer.
You've learned more than I have. You've had exposure to so many things that I haven't had exposure to, and experiences that I haven't had experiences of. And so your perspective helps, feed into different feelings that I might be, because how many times have I felt alone or whatever, but your perspective of even being maybe alone in ministry, or alone in your faith journey, or things like that. You've been down that journey longer than I have, and so you probably have insight and those other type of things. And so I need voices like yours in my life. I also need voices that are right, right with me.
Yeah.
In the path, to where they're going through the same kind of feelings and struggles and things that I have. And by God's grace, I do have those relationships. But then you also need some folks that maybe are a little bit behind you, and that you can kind of look back and reach back and be able to kind of help and kind of give some advice and insight into some of the things that they might be feeling. And so I think just the diversity of those relationships, I think, are important that you have somebody that's a little bit ahead of you, but you have some folks that are
Yeah.
beside you, but some folks behind you as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I know another thing that connected us on a deeper level. You've been a pastor. I'm a pastor of a parish, and that connection, that faith connection, for me, our common belief in Jesus and His showing God's universal love. But at the same time, what Jesus demonstrated, and what I know I've learned and everything, He would have such a presence with people. So for example, one of my favorite stories, and maybe some here don't know it, but Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who was resented because he worked for the Romans and the Jews were subjugated, and then he's up a tree because he's short and he wants to see this Jesus, and a lot of people are very critical of him as the tax collector, but Jesus notices him, reaches out to him, and says, "Hey, I'm going to come to your house for a meal," kind of like what I did, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Not trying to be Jesus that way, but that presence, that to me, over and over again, is the gift of presence, which as I look back at the two of us and at others, that wow, there's such a gift of presence there, that heart and soul presence, and such a sense of an underlying purpose, that purpose to make those connections and to lift each other up, because none of us should have to go through life feeling isolated or lonely, even for a while.
Yeah. God, like Father, like Son. I think God has a way of, a beautiful way of just entering into other people's experiences and other people's reality and meeting them where they are and being present where they are. And I can look back at all of the, people who've been, formative in my life, and it's always been the thing that I can point to that, like, man, this is the thing that stands out in all of them, is presence.
Yeah.
That they made me feel like I was seen, that I was, that I was okay. It was okay to be wherever I was in that moment, and that encouragement. And I think Jesus is the ultimate leader in that sense. In that sense. So yeah.
I've heard from others also the whole notion of whether it's friendship or relationship, when people are able to be more vulnerable with each other. Because I know even when I was younger, even in the seminary coming out, we would come back to the seminary, we were studying and going out to do programs, come back and talk about our successes, and which was great, and we did this, and wow, these people liked hearing me preach and all that. But I know we didn't so much then share, because sometimes we had hurts or losses, and we're seminarians, and probably in any setting, being able to talk, which was good, talk about our successes. But I remember with one friend in the seminary, in fact, I saw him recently, he never went on to priesthood, and he was going through some concerns. And eventually, and he was a little older than me, and he began to talk, and I think seeing that I was open and so forth, good guy, and he began to share some of his inner feelings about whether or not he felt God was calling him to be a priest. And I'll never forget that he said, "Well, Norm, I knew I could talk to you because I knew you wouldn't judge that, you wouldn't put that down, you'd listen," and you mentioned that listening and whatever it is. And in my own life, sometimes that vulnerability when I'm going through a lot, I remember the one time when my mom was very ill and she was my whole family, and I was feeling a lot. And I remember one situation, I was at the parish council, and somebody from our council gave a great presentation about a new program to do, and then afterward I was listening, and the person said, "Well, Father Norm, you didn't seem to be that interested in my program. You don't like it." What it helped me to realize, and I was willing to be open, I said, "Oh no, my mom's very ill. I'm not feeling as with it. I'm hurting inside. Well, why don't you let us know, Father? Why don't you let us know? I said, no, you're right. I didn't. So the biggest reason was just I'm having a certain sadness. And I have to admit, as the priest, Father Norm's positive and loves the Lord and everything is good. And so, presenting that, but saying, no, that person put me in touch, willing to be vulnerable with her about, hey, I'm the pastor, but I'm hurting right here too.
Yeah, and I think too many times people get, especially people who are in ministry, whether they're pastors or, whenever you get a title in ministry, there's always this pressure to perform and to provide a service. And oftentimes that grace to be human is sometimes left out, and people want you to be omni-available to themselves, but it makes it really, really hard to be human, in those roles, but thank God for people like that who will come along and say, how are you? Like you seem like you're a little down, but I know we're going to wrap up soon.
Pretty soon, yes.
So if we have a viewer out there, right, and this is the only episode that they're ever going to look at, they're like, well, the guy, he's handsome, and that guy, he looks pretty good too, but I'm not sold.
Who are you saying's the handsome one?
We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to keep going. But if there was one thing that listener you would want them to take away, what would it be?
I think in part to be able to be open to other people for who they are, and truly be open, and open to what's going on in one's own heart, to be able to share, and to know that doesn't necessarily happen just like that, but to treasure relationships that can run a little deeper over time are a real gift and real life-giving. Because I find a lot of the people who say they don't have good relationships, they don't have somebody that connects or shows great interest in them, are often lonely and lose a sense of vitality. For me, and I think for you, it's been vital to have those kind of friendships and relationships, including with God, the loving presence God wants to be with us.
Yeah. If I had to say something, I would say, I would say don't entrench yourself in your own worldview, and be more interested in the people around you that are different than you. Suspend your perspectives for a minute and try to enter into other people's experiences. Because the moment that we start to see each other as something other than human, and we give a name of immigrant or criminal or whatever, we give ourselves license to dehumanize people. And people are beautiful, and they are images of God that if we do not do that, if we aren't inquisitive and aren't leaning into other people's experiences, we miss out on who God actually is. Because there's a piece of God that's hidden in that person that you won't actually get to experience unless you know them. And so, I would say, if you are looking at this, be interested in the people that are around you. Ask questions. Invite people into your space and learn the people around you. But
and for me, you've been saying it, and people who may be different than you, and recognize that difference not as something to fear, not as a threat,
Yeah.
but as a certain curious in a good way, a wholesome curious. Oh, gee, I want to get to know you better, or how you see it from this angle, and I see it very differently. Or let me know a little of your story. You're coming from a whole different place, and I want to seek that so that maybe I've seen you as different, and at first I don't want to connect with that person, or oh, I don't want them in my life, and then you see, wow, here's a beautiful person because you've been open to hearing their story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think for me, you have a perspective of somebody, or you might have a perspective of somebody, and then in my case, I got to pastor people who were on the other side of the political aisle than me, and then it puts things in perspective, not only just to say that people are shaped by their experiences, but also, we all have pieces of the puzzle, and we can't just look at our pieces, the whole puzzle. So, with
hey,
that.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in to our first episode. Heart Matters with Father Norm.
Good to
and
be
Gino.
together.
It's good to be
God
together.
bless all of you for taking the time to spend with us and appreciate in different ways the feedback you may give to us.
Yeah. Till next time.